This is my absolute favourite meal to cook. So whenever I'm doing a curry, I always cook the meat in the oven. I always feel like it sort of mimics a bit more of a tandoor, and you can get a caramelisation on it without discolouring the bottom of the pan. So I always cook, even if it's chicken, lamb, I cook it dry basically in an oven and then add it to my pan, my mix. I think it adds a bit more flavour to the mix. Obviously I'm not trained in Indian food, but whilst I was at uni in Birmingham, they have some of the best curry houses in the UK, and I spent a lot of my university career just trying to perfect the perfect curry. Into this blender, I've just got lots of ginger and garlic. Then I've got coriander seeds. It's a little bit of Madras curry powder. This is Kashmiri Chilli, so really beautiful and dark red. We've got cinnamon, which we're going to toast into the oil. Bay leaves, cloves, cardamom. That's going to flavour the oil. Fenugreek. There's something that's not used very often, but it's got a really beautiful flavour. So a good amount of fenugreek in there. Not too much because it can get quite bitter. And then this is a little bit of garam masala. Lots of good stuff in there, to be honest. It's got ground coriander, black peppercorns, it's got turmeric powder, it's got all the good stuff. And then I'm just going to go in with a good amount of water just to blitz up this paste properly. I always put a good glug of vegetable oil in there. You can find the recipe and all these spices in the description. The key to most curry, which took me a while to realise, is it's actually the onion. Especially with a nice dark curry like this, what you want to be doing is you want to be caramelising your onion until it's really, really nice and dark. Don't use olive oil or pomace oil or anything like that, or rapeseed. This is just good vegetable oil, sliced nice and fine. We'll whack our onions in there. And we're going to caramelise these until they're really, really nice and dark. And that's the key to getting depth and sweetness in a biryani. That's our spice blend. Actually smells completely incredible. I'm going to add this to my beef. You see, it's not too fine as well. It's still quite coarse. And then I'm just going to use my hand just to give that a really good marinade. Now, if you wanted to, you could do this the day before. To be honest, you can actually just do it on the day and it's absolutely fine. Because it's going to be braised down, it's going to get all that flavour through the meat anyway. So onions are on a nice high heat. The oven's on very, very high. I guess it almost mimics what you would do in a tandoor, where you would cook the meat and then potentially add it to a curry, and it gives it a different type of texture. These onions, it's going to take realistically about 15 minutes to get these to the right stage. So whilst we're doing that, we can start by rinsing our rice. The traditional rice, it would be a Basmati. I've got this golden Sella, which is it's actually from a Caribbean supplier, but it's pure Basmati rice, but it's toasted. It's got lots of starch in there, which all basically has to be removed. Otherwise you get a really claggy, not very nice biryani. It's really, really important to wash your rice. So I'm just going to wash it continuously until the water turns completely clear. Most Indian recipes, they use something called ghee, which is basically just a form of preserved, clarified butter. But it's also got a different flavour sort of profile to the butter that we use. So if you can get some ghee, I recommend it, 100%. If not, I do just use normal butter. And then what I'm going to do is fry a good amount of onions. Yeah, I'm deep frying these, but just get some oil in a pan. Yeah, just shallow fry them until they go crispy. Right, so my rice is pretty much running clear now. So just let it settle a little bit. We'll give it one more rinse after this. It is a luxurious dish, so I'm going to hit the onions with a good hunk of butter. Fat is your friend with the biryani because it sort of lubricates the whole thing and makes it all that rice super delicious. All that flavour imparts into the rice. So our onions are nice and crispy and golden. Take that out. Saffron, obviously insanely expensive. It's not soluble in oil, so you need to mix it with something that's got a high water content. You can use water, but The milk just adds a little bit more of a luxurious feel to it. Right, and there we're getting there with the caramelisation on the onions. It shouldn't take too much longer. Right, so this beautiful beef comes out. Basically, with all curries, it's always a mix of getting the right caramelisation, but also the order in which you toast your spices off. With this one, I'm actually going to toast some of my spices before I put the rice in the second pot. Onions are there. Whack in your curry paste. Cook it out quickly. You don't want to over toast it at this stage. Tomato paste. And cook this out. All of your beef. Scrape the bottom of the pan. Obviously I left the beef bones in there, they've got a lot of good flavour in them. Nice, cover with beef stock. That's now going to braise for about 2 hours. Right, so this curry's been going now for a good amount of time. You can see it's got a beautiful intense flavour. All my curries, I always finish with a tiny hit of MSG, and then I season at the end. So that's got fine salt, touch of MSG in there, and then we're just going to save a touch of this sauce to serve with the final biryani. I always like to spoon just a little bit more of the gravy over. So what I'm going to do now, this is the pan I'm going to cook my biryani in, and I'm going to cook off these aromats in there. Got 1 Star Anise, got a couple of cloves, a couple of green cardamom pods. This is just going to lightly toast these spices. The final result from all of that, soak in saffron, and we're going to use this to, it colours the biryani, but it also adds a beautiful depth of flavour all the way through the biryani. I'm just going to roughly chop some coriander. I always use the stalks, they've got more flavour than the leaves. I'm going to whack that all into the curry. So spices are lightly toasted. Sort of last thing, these black mustard seeds. If you over toast mustard, I always find it gets quite bitter, but they do add a beautiful fragrance. Finish with 2 dried bay leaves. I personally don't mind getting a little bit of spice or herb when I'm eating my biryani. Some people take them out at this point. I'm going to put some curry, layer of rice, saffron milk, and then I put a layer of crispy onions. I mean, to call this an Indian lasagna is probably a very disrespectful way of putting it, but it just relates to the way that you layer it up. So we've got curry, rice, saffron, crispy onions. Curry, rice, saffron, crispy onions, and then we finish with a lot more on top. I personally like it quite saucy. Like, you go to some places in the world and it can be quite dry, the biryani. I remember in India it was super, super dry. So, I mean, obviously when you go to an Indian here, when I was slightly younger, I didn't really understand that what we'd done in the UK to Indian food. But it's basically, you know, it's spices are pretty much are very similar, but the dishes and the way they eat is very different. And then last stage is just another little layer of rice. We'll leave a lot of space for the rice to expand, and then all of that beautiful saffron, and then just finish this with crispy onion too. A layer of tin foil. So you want to really stop the moisture from escaping out of this. It's going to steam and stew and cook all at the same time. And then I go on with a lid. Now in India, in parts of India, they use almost like a pastry, inedible pastry ring that goes around the pot. Or some people actually top it with a pastry lid. It's almost as similar as doing like a jollof or something like that. And then we want to go quite low and slow. I'm actually only going to set the oven to 160. When it comes out of the oven, you need to let it rest, and then you need to let it steam. So you take the lid off, let it steam for a little bit as well, and then you've got that perfect fluffy biryani rice that you know. So this has been in for now about 1 hour and 40. You can see there's a good amount of steam in there, and it's nicely risen up, so you know that the rice is cooked. Whoa, look at that. So you got the saffron, all the cooked onions, and then you can see the beef is just flaking away, super, super tender and moist. Look at that beef just like falling apart. And you've got these layers and layers of crispy onion. And they've got all that fragrant spice at the bottom as well. I actually don't think there's a more magical sight. Look at the state of that. I always hit it with a bit of the extra curry sauce. Crispy onions all over. Very roughly chopped coriander to finish. That's it. That is pretty much my favourite thing to cook and eat. Beef biryani with fragrant saffron, crispy onions running through it, and braised beef. Roadhouse. Oh, so good.